Have you ever noticed how the deepest wounds are precisely the ones that don't bleed? They leave no scars on the skin, but silently shape who you become. While the world celebrates those who scream their pain, there are souls who carry an invisible weight, turning tears into strength, fear into independence, and despair into empathy. But how long will you live as if you were strong enough not to need anyone? Carl Jung taught that ignored pain doesn't disappear. It hides in the darkest corners of the psyche and disguises itself in behaviors. What you call maturation may actually be armor built for survival. And what if I told you that this same pain, once finally heard, could become the key to a fuller life? Are you ready to look within and discover what your masks are trying to hide? Trait 1. The lonely fortress of hyper-independence. There's a cruel irony in those who carry the world on their shoulders but tremble inside when they hear a simple, "I need you." Hyper-independence is not strength. It's a conditioned reflex. It is born when vulnerability was punished, when asking for help became synonymous with failure, or when abandonment taught that trusting is too big a risk. The hyper-independent person isn't cold, they are scared. Their armor of self-sufficiency is made of solidified fear, not pride. But what is the price of this radical autonomy? The body gets tired, the heart becomes isolated, and relationships turn into minefields, where any offer of support feels like a threat. Healing begins when this person understands, allowing yourself to be human, fragile, needy, interdependent, is not regression. It is courage. True freedom is not carrying everything alone, but consciously choosing when to let someone hold your hand. Trait 2. The invisible weight of empathy that heals everyone but yourself. Some people are born with antennas for the pain of others, not out of a gift but out of necessity. From an early age, they learn to decipher changes in tone of voice, almost imperceptible facial expressions, silences that scream. This sharp empathy is not simple compassion. It's a survival radar, developed to anticipate emotional storms in unstable environments. The tragic paradox? While calming other people's seas, they navigate turbulent waters within themselves, never anchoring at their own safe harbor. This ability to feel others deeply before feeling oneself creates a silent imbalance. You become the always available shoulder, the infallible counselor, the person who never says, "I can't," until the day your own heart starts bleeding in loneliness. Healing begins when you realize that empathy without self-preservation is like donating blood endlessly. At some point, your own body collapses. True balance lies in learning to extend the same compassion you offer to the world to that wounded child who still lives inside you. Trait 3. The emotional labyrinth of those afraid to love. There is a peculiar type of loneliness, the one that persists even when someone is by your side. These are relationships that never go beyond the surface, where every word is measured and every gesture of affection comes with an invisible break. Not because of a lack of love, but because somewhere in the past, full surrender became synonymous with danger. The fear is not of love itself, but of what comes afterward. The possibility of being left again exactly at the moment you allowed yourself to trust. Healing begins when we recognize that the past doesn't hold a monopoly over our future. Every new encounter is a blank page, not a repetition of what has already been. Disarming these defense mechanisms takes courage. Not the courage to dive in head first, but the wisdom to take small steps, testing the ground. When you allow someone to prove they are different, you are writing a new story for that wounded child who still inhabits your heart. True intimacy is not the absence of fear, but the decision to love despite it. Trait 4. The steel mask, whose weight no one sees. There is a peculiar loneliness in being seen as the strong one. These are people who have become pillars for others while their own foundations crack silently. This persona of invulnerability is not a choice. It's armor forged out of necessity, built when showing weakness meant losing the little support they had. The world applauds their resilience without realizing that every whispered "I can handle it" is a muffled scream, the result of years of practice in suppressing their own needs. But even the strongest grow tired of carrying alone the weight that should be shared. True revolution begins when they understand that strength is not measured by the ability to endure everything, but by the courage to say, "I am tired." Behind every unbreakable persona lies a human being who deserves the right to falter, to retreat, to be supported, not for being strong, but simply for existing. Trait 5. The world at full volume. When the senses become alarms. Some people carry an alert system that never shuts off. Bright lights cut like knives, loud voices echo like thunder, crowds turn into oppressive labyrinths. This hypersensitivity is not fussiness or drama. It's the body keeping alive the record of past dangers, reacting to invisible threats that the conscious mind has already overcome, but the nervous system has not yet forgotten. Every exaggerated reaction is actually an SOS signal written in the silent language of the senses. Yet, this very sensitivity that tortures can be transformed into a gift. Those who feel the world with such intensity develop a unique perception. They pick up nuances others miss, perceive unspoken truths, connect with their environment almost mystically. The path is not to anesthetize this sensitivity, but to learn how to regulate it, turning hypervigilance into full presence. When you begin interpreting these reactions as messages from your deepest self, rather than defects to be eliminated, you discover that even the most heightened senses can become allies in the journey of self-discovery. Trait 6. The invisible. Prison of perfect control. For some people, life must be a puzzle assembled piece by piece. Any slip, any surprise, any unexpected event feels like a punch to the stomach. This obsessive need for control is not organization. It's fear, disguised as efficiency. It was born from moments when chaos reigned without warning, leaving marks so deep that now the mind works relentlessly to predict every possibility, like a general preparing for a war that may never come. But life cannot be contained in spreadsheets or scripts. The more you try to dominate every variable, the more anxiety grows, turning days into emotional minefields. The antidote? Learning to dance with the unpredictable. When you begin to let go of total control, you discover something liberating. Beauty lies precisely in the moments we don't plan, in the connections that arise when we let life flow. True security doesn't come from trying to master the universe, but from trusting that you can handle whatever comes, even when you can't see it ahead. Trait 7. The sanctuary of silence in a world that never stops talking. Amid the constant noise of life, some souls find refuge in silence, not out of indifference but out of vital necessity. This withdrawal is not an escape, but an essential return to their own center, where thoughts can finally breathe far from others' expectations. For those carrying deep wounds, silence becomes sacred territory, the only place where masks can fall without judgment, where exhaustion is allowed to exist. But when refuge becomes a fortress, isolation can turn into another prison. True balance lies in learning to move between the silence that regenerates and the connection that nourishes. When you find the right measure, you realize you can step out of that internal sanctuary without losing yourself in the noise of the world, carrying with you the peace found in quietness, but now able to share your essence with those worthy of crossing your gates. Trait 8. The fortress of a heart that learned to mistrust. Some hearts protect themselves with walls so high that even the purest love can't climb them. Not out of pride or coldness, but because at some point, Surrendering meant losing pieces of the soul. Every gesture of affection is scrutinized as a possible disguise for pain. Every loving word passes through an invisible filter that asks, "Will this hurt me again?" The paradox is cruel. The more the heart craves connection, the more it reinforces the defenses that prevent it. But what if you could rewrite that story? Healing begins when we understand that not all love repeats the same mistakes. It's not about abandoning caution, but about allowing it to coexist with the courage to try again. When you dare to lower your guard for someone truly deserving, you discover that the greatest risk is not getting hurt. It's missing the chance to live a love unlike anything you've ever known. True protection isn't found in walls, but in the wisdom of choosing whom to trust. Trait 9. The sacred fire of justice that never burns out. Souls marked by injustice develop an infallible radar for imbalances and disrespect. Their moral sense burns with an intensity few can understand. It's not mere opinion, but a visceral reaction, as if each new injustice rekindles all past wounds. What seems like exaggeration to some is survival to them, an inner voice that refuses to be silenced again, even if it means swimming against the tide of conformity. But this fire must be tempered by wisdom. When channeled consciously, it becomes a catalyst for change, not just revolt, but construction. The challenge lies in distinguishing between the battles worthy of your sacred fire and those that merely reactivate old pains. True justice begins when you learn to fight without burning your own peace, defending values without losing your humanity in the process. Trait 10. The eyes that see what words hide. Some people carry a peculiar gift. They see the tears not shed behind well-rehearsed smiles. They hear the muffled scream in seemingly comfortable silences. This sharp perception is not magic, but the result of pain transformed into sensitivity. Those who have navigated their own internal storms develop a sixth sense for recognizing the tempests of others, even when disguised by calm appearances. But this gift comes with a price, the tendency to absorb emotions that aren't theirs. The secret lies in learning to use this deep connection without getting lost in it, like a lighthouse that illuminates the way for others without mistaking itself for the ship in distress. When balanced, this ability becomes one of the purest forms of compassion, seeing the truth of others without needing to carry it as your own, offering presence without sacrificing yourself on the altar of excessive empathy. Trait 11. The invisible prison of "I don't deserve to be a burden." Some people breathe guilt simply for existing. Every expressed need feels like a sin. Every shared emotion seems like an unbearable burden. This chronic fear of being a weight didn't appear out of nowhere. It was carefully cultivated in relationships where their needs were treated as inconveniences, where they learned that occupying space was a privilege to be earned, not an inherent right. But here's the truth that shame hides. You don't have to shrink yourself to fit into other people's worlds. Asking is not failing. Needing is not weakness. When you begin to allow yourself to exist in all your dimensions, including the fragile ones, you discover something revolutionary. The people who truly matter don't see you as a burden, but as a gift. True love doesn't charge admission to your pain. Trait 12. The hidden wisdom in simple moments. Those who have lost much learn to see with different eyes. They find poetry in the steam of morning coffee, music in the rhythm of steady breathing, magic in a hug that lasts a few seconds longer. This ability to value the small things is not naivety, but wisdom forged through pain. When you survive storms, every moment of calm becomes a gift. Every simple gesture carries a shine that once went unnoticed. This refined sensitivity is a hidden gift of a difficult journey. While many chase after hollow grandeur, you have discovered the secret. Life pulses in the intervals, in the sighs between one event and another. Cultivating this awareness means staying anchored to what truly matters, not as an escape, but as a daily celebration of the beauty that persists even after the pain. Trait 13. When pain becomes a compass. The soul that has crossed the dark valley is never satisfied with merely surviving. It must turn its suffering into a beacon. This search for purpose is not escape, but the deepest form of emotional alchemy, transforming the lead of pain into the gold of meaning. Every tear becomes a lesson, every scar turns into a map, and what once seemed a burden now reveals itself as fuel for something greater than oneself. Some find this purpose by guiding others through their own darkness, others by creating art that speaks to the wounded soul. The form doesn't matter. What heals is the certainty that nothing was in vain. When you understand that your story can be the missing light in someone else's journey, pain loses its power. It doesn't disappear, but it stops being your master and becomes your servant. A stern teacher that, in the end, prepared you for something only you could accomplish. Conclusion: the journey from shadow to light. Each of these 13 traits was a creative reflection of the soul trying to protect itself, a brilliant strategy that, at some point, saved you from completely collapsing. But here is the invitation life offers now. You no longer need to carry these same armors with the same weight as before. What was once necessary for survival can today be transformed into tools for living. Your hyper-independence into self-confidence, your excessive empathy into balanced compassion, your fear into wisdom. These marks are not flaws, but war scars that tell the story of who you had to become to make it this far. And if there's one truth that all of them reveal, it's this: your light is greater than any pain that tried to extinguish it. You didn't overcome everything you did just to stay small. You came to bloom exactly where you once thought you would never breathe again.